Hi everyone, in this video, which is part of the Node.js how-to series, we're going to be creating an HTTP server. In previous videos, we've been making client requests using the HTTP module. Now we're going to be using that same HTTP module to create an HTTP server. Let's begin. I'm just going to create a new file in our project folder and call it server.js. So we have server.js, and now we can simply open up this project in Visual Studio Code. Now that our project is open up in Visual Studio Code, let's get to work. The first thing we're going to do is bring in our HTTP module. Say require HTTP. Now you might see new versions of Node.js where you can actually do import. You can import this module, and I think there's this convention where they have the node and have HTTP. Yeah, something like this. Import HTTP. Sorry, I'm not doing that correctly. I'm just coming down and say import HTTP from node HTTP. So you might see new versions of Node.js, or rather you'll see new version of Node.js where you can do this using the import export module format. But for now, we'll still just be using require, as this is backward compatible and can still be used in recent Node.js versions. But if you want this, if you prefer this import style, then just go ahead. You might also see some new versions do node : some newer versions rather, and if that is what your version supports, just go ahead and do that. But for now, we're just going to stick with this, and let's go ahead. Let's create our server. Say const server, and to create an HTTP server with the HTTP module, we call HTTP and we call its create server method. Create server. And in this function will take a callback. The callback has two arguments, one for the request that was sent and one for the response that will be sent back. So let's get this callback working. Just going to pull this to the side because we might need more room. So HTTP create server. Inside this server, we're just simply going to log some of the elements of the request. That's for any request sent to the server. The first thing we're going to log is the request method. I'm going to say request method, and we'll just call the method property on the request object, this request object. Next, we'd like to see the path that the request was sent to, and for that we're also going to say request path. And simply, I didn't put a colon here. Put a colon here, get more fancy. Okay, so here we're going to call the URL property on our request object. So that will give us the request path. For the base URL, let's just echo a welcome message. That will definitely be a GET request. So we're going to check if the request method is a GET request. That's if someone just loads this in a browser or calls this from an HTTP client. Say if this is a GET request and if the client is calling the base URL. Client is calling the base URL. Then what we want to do is to use the response object to end the request by sending back a message. And this message is just simply going to say, welcome to the Node.js API. Yeah. API, Node.js API, Node.js server, whatever. Let me just do /server. Yeah, so whatever your perspective is. So welcome to the Node.js API. Now that we have our server defined, let's run it. To run our server, we have to make it listen on the port. So we're going to say server, we want you to listen on port, just going to say 5000. It's one of the allowed ports that I can use on this machine. 5000, and this can also take a callback. So let's say we want to print back a message to the console to say our server is running. This can take a callback. And in our callback, we can console.log and say something like HTTP server is now running. HTTP server is now running. So we have our server defined and we have it listening on a port. Let's take it for a spin. So I'm just going to make sure I save this, then go to the command line and say node server.js. Let's hit enter. If there are no errors, just tell us HTTP server is now running. So that's perfect. Our HTTP server is now running. Now let's call it. Let's call our server. Go to open another tab in my terminal. And our server is running on port 5000. We know that already. So I'm going to use call to call the base URL. Say call HTTP localhost, because this is running on our machine, localhost 5000. Localhost 5000. Let's hit enter and let's see what we get back. It tells us welcome to the Nodejs server / API. That's the expected response. Welcome to the Nodejs server API / server. Let's go back to the previous terminal to see what's going on that end. As you can see, aside the server now running message that we got when the server was booted up, we now get this two new messages when we made the request. We get our request method, it says it's a get, which is correct, and our request part is the base URL, which is also correct. That's good. If we go back to the previous terminal and run another request and just say slash products, we hit enter, we don't get any message back because we didn't tell it to. Okay, this is actually still running, but we would not get any message back. And but here, over here at the server side, we're going to get our request method still get, and now our request part will be products, which is correct. And that's it. You have a fully functional server running using Node.js. If you have enjoyed this video, please leave a like. And for more bite-sized videos on how to do stuff with Node.js and other technologies, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.